The ship arrived over Earth with no warning. It hung above the Pacific Ocean like a dark star, massive and silent. Radio signals went out immediately from every military base on the planet. Governments gathered their leaders. Scientists stared at their screens. News channels broadcast the same image over and over again. Kevin Hartwell was teaching 8th grade science when the principal interrupted the class. The children had already heard the news. Their parents had called the school. Some were scared. Some were excited. Kevin told them to sit down and be calm. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever. The Galactic Council had been watching Earth for 300 years. They knew about human wars, human governments, human weapons. They had studied Earth's military for decades. Their computers told them that humans were not advanced enough to be a threat. Humans had no space weapons. Humans had no shields. Humans had no way to travel beyond their own solar system. In the eyes of the Council, Earth was a developing world with primitive people. Vex 7 was the Council's representative chosen to make contact. Vex 7 had completed 14 first contact missions with developing species. Vex 7 knew how to make simple demands and how to give species time to understand they had no choice. Vex 7 had never failed a mission. The Council sent Vex 7 to Earth with confidence. The ship descended and landed outside Geneva. Military forces surrounded the landing zone. Generals and political leaders gathered in a secure room. They waited for the aliens to make the first move. The Council wanted them to wait. Making developing species wait was a way of showing power. When the door to the ship opened, Vex 7 stepped out alone. This was also a demonstration of power. One being could walk out because no human weapon could harm the ship. The generals watched on screens. They tried to look strong, but they felt helpless. Vex 7 met with the military leaders first. This was correct procedure according to the Council's studies of human society. In every human culture, Vex 7 knew the military was where power lived. The generals would make the decision. The military would enforce the terms. Vex 7 explained the Council's position with simple words. Earth will become part of the Galactic Council. You will follow our laws. You will pay taxes to support the Council's navy. In return, you will receive protection from outside threats. Your weapons will be kept for defense only. Your governments will be supervised by Council administrators. The generals did not like these terms, but they had no weapons that worked against the Council's ship. They had no choice. Vex 7 told them that Earth had 3 weeks to prepare the population for integration into the Council. Then the Council would send administrators to establish control. Vex 7 left the meeting and returned to the ship. The generals did not know what to do. The military leaders of every nation on Earth met by video conference. They discussed their options. There were no good options. Within hours, news channels told the world what had happened. Humanity now belonged to the Galactic Council, but the military could not keep the news contained to just military communications. It spread to radio, television, and internet. Teachers heard about it. Farmers heard about it. Engineers heard about it. Nurses heard about it. Within 6 hours, billions of people knew that Earth had been conquered. Kevin was at home with his wife Diane when the news came down. Diane was a nurse at Cook County Hospital. She had worked through pandemics and crises. She knew how to stay calm when other people panicked. She looked at Kevin with serious eyes. What does this mean for our children? She asked. Kevin did not have a good answer. He knew that governments would try to negotiate. He knew there would be meetings. He knew the military would look for weaknesses in the Council's technology. But he was not a military person. He was a teacher. He understood how people learned and how people thought. That made him see something the generals did not see. They sent one being to negotiate with our military, Kevin said. That means they think military is where decisions come from. They think if the generals accept, the people will accept. They do not understand how many millions of people live on Earth. They do not understand that decisions here can come from anywhere. Diane nodded. She was already thinking the same way. The military called a meeting with civilian advisors. Kevin was invited because the school system had recommended him. He was a teacher who understood communication. The military asked him to help explain the council's demands to the population without causing panic. Kevin attended the meeting in a secure government building. The generals showed him their communications. They had already written statements for radio and television. The statements were full of careful words. They talked about negotiation and peaceful integration and transition period. Kevin read the statements and shook his head. People will not believe this, he said. People know they are being conquered. They know they have no choice. Words like integration are empty. You need to tell the truth. The generals did not want to tell the truth. But Kevin explained that truth would make people trust the government. Lies would make people look for other sources of information. Lies would make people stop listening to official channels. Let me speak directly to the population, Kevin said. Not as a military official. As a person, I will tell them what happened. I will tell them what the council wants. I will explain why we have no choice right now. But I will also tell them that we are alive, and we are still here, and we are still human. The generals were not sure about this plan, but they had no better ideas. They gave Kevin permission to make a broadcast. Kevin wrote his own words. He did not use careful language. He did not hide the truth. He spoke like a teacher speaking to students. The Galactic Council came to Earth today. They said we must join their organization. Their weapons are far more advanced than ours. We cannot fight them with military force. But they want to work with our governments, not destroy us. They want control, but they want civilization to continue. So we will accept their terms while we understand what this means for our future. The generals listened to Kevin's words, and something changed in the room. Kevin was not saying everything would be fine. He was not pretending this was good news. He was being honest. The generals approved the broadcast. Kevin sat in the broadcast center that night. Cameras were arranged in front of him. They would send his words to every nation on Earth. He thought of his wife Diane. He thought of his children sleeping at home. He thought of his students and their fear. He took a breath and began to speak. My name is Kevin Hartwell. I teach science to 8th grade students in Chicago. Today, an alien species called the Galactic Council made contact with our world. They told our military leaders that Earth must join their organization. I was asked to speak to you because I am not a soldier and I am not a politician. I am just a teacher who was in the wrong place at the right time. I want to tell you what I know and what I think. As Kevin spoke, his words reached billions of people. In his voice, people heard something they needed to hear. He was not trying to convince them everything was good. He was telling them the truth as clearly as possible. He was telling them that humanity faced a challenge, but humans had faced challenges before. He was telling them to stay calm and stay together. The council's computers monitored the broadcast. Vex 7 watched Kevin's words reach across the planet. Vex 7 calculated the effect. Vex 7 did not see any military threat. Vex 7 saw a teacher being honest. Vex 7 saw this as a good thing. Vex 7 reported that the population was accepting the council's demands, but this was Vex 7's first mistake. The council was not paying attention to the billions of people hearing Kevin's words. They were not watching what came after. They did not see that Kevin had given people something more important than information. He had given them something they needed for what was coming next. 3 days after Kevin's broadcast, the council sent their first demands to Earth's governments. All governments must report to a central authority. All military forces must submit to council control. All communication systems must be monitored by council officials. All resources must be registered and allocated through council administrators. Governments began setting up coordination centers in their capital cities. But something unexpected was already happening in hospitals, schools, and factories across the world. People were talking to each other. Claire worked as a nurse in St. Thomas Hospital in London. She had worked there for 16 years. She knew every doctor, every staff member, and hundreds of patients. When the council's demands became clear, Claire understood what control meant. It meant someone outside would decide how many medicines were available. It meant someone outside would decide who received treatment. It meant her job would change from helping people to following orders from strangers. Claire called a meeting of the hospital staff. 50 people gathered in the break room. She told them the truth. The council would take over their resources soon. The council would demand documentation of every supply. The council would want to know every patient's condition. They would use this information to control the population. But we do not have to give them everything, Claire said. We can keep duplicate records. We can hide supplies. We can treat patients the council does not know about. We can work together to protect people. The staff listened. They were scared. But they had something the council did not understand. They had a reason to act. They had patients who depended on them. They had a responsibility. One by one, they agreed. The hospital would have 2 systems. One system would report to the council. One system would be hidden. Within a week, Claire was coordinating with nurses in 40 hospitals across Europe and North America. She did not send emails. She did not use official channels. She called people on personal phones. She traveled to meetings in person. She taught them how to organize without leaving a digital record. The council's computers could see governments cooperating, but they could not see nurses organizing. In Bangalore, Roger worked as a software engineer. He had written code for global communication systems. He knew how technology worked and how to make systems that were hard to track. When he heard about the council's demand to monitor all communication, he understood the danger. The council would see every message. The council would read every private conversation. Roger invited a small group of programmers to his apartment. They sat in his living room with laptops and coffee. Roger explained his plan. They would create a communication network that worked inside the normal internet, but was invisible to outside monitoring. It would not be perfect. It would be slow, but it would be secure. We cannot fight the council's weapons, Roger said, but we can make a network they cannot break. We can give people a way to talk without the council listening. The programmers went to work. Roger taught them his techniques. They wrote code that split messages into pieces and sent them through thousands of different routes. They created encryption that took longer to break than the council would care to spend. They built redundancy so that breaking one part did not break the whole system. Within 2 weeks, Roger's network was working. It could send messages across the world without the council seeing them. But Roger knew that was not enough. Networks needed users. Networks needed purpose. So Roger started teaching other people how to use it. He did it in person. He did it face to face. He taught his family. They taught their friends. They taught people in their communities. By the end of the first month, 500,000 people were using Roger's network. By the end of the second month, 2 million people were using it. The council had no idea that such a network existed. In Lagos, Victoria was a high school teacher. She taught history and literature to teenagers. She had always believed that education was the most powerful tool in the world. When the council took control of Earth, Victoria knew that education would be one of the first things they would change. The council would want to teach about the glory of the council, They would want to teach obedience. Victoria started meeting with other teachers in her city. They gathered in churches, in homes, and in parks. She spoke to them about what was coming. They will change what we teach, Victoria said. They will make our children memorize their laws instead of learning how to think. We have to create our own education. We have to teach our children to understand the world as it really is, not as the council wants them to see it. The teachers created a hidden curriculum. During official school hours, they taught what the council required. After school, in small groups, they taught the truth. They taught critical thinking. They taught history that the council would not approve. They taught that humans had value and rights that could not be taken by force. Victoria's network spread across Africa, then to South America, then to Asia. Teachers in Moscow connected with teachers in Cairo. Teachers in Manila connected with teachers in Sao Paulo. They shared lesson plans. They discussed how to keep information alive while living under council control. Kevin watched these movements growing in the reports he read. The council had made him an advisor because they thought he was helping them. But Kevin was actually helping the resistance grow. He recommended that governments use more civilian communication. The council approved. More civilians got access to the networks. More people could organize. Diane worked with the nurses. Her shift at Cook County Hospital gave her contact with hundreds of people. She started talking to them about healthcare when the council was not watching. She told them what Claire's network was doing. She recruited medical students and young doctors. She taught them how to help people secretly while reporting to the council officially. The council's administrators arrived in every major city 2 months after first contact. They set up offices and began demanding documentation. They counted military equipment. They measured resources. They interviewed government officials. They found that everything was correct and organized. Governments were cooperating fully, but the council did not look at hospitals closely. They did not test the communication networks. They did not visit schools to verify what was being taught. They assumed that if governments cooperated, then everything on Earth was cooperating. This was their second mistake. The council ordered factories to increase production of materials needed for the council's projects. They ordered governments to gather census information. They demanded that all people report for medical screening. These demands seemed reasonable to the council. These were just routine orders that any administrator would give. But when the orders reached the people, something happened that the council did not predict. Millions of ordinary humans responded, but not the way the council expected. Factory workers began following the orders exactly, but never quite finished on time. They reported technical problems that required solving. They explained delays with patients and documents. Production happened, but slowly. The council could not stop production without admitting something was wrong. People reported for medical screening, but the clinics created by Rogers' network sent people to hidden clinics instead. The people the council tested were different people each time. The council found that Earth's population numbers were wrong, but when they tried to verify, they found different data in different places. Everything was confusing. Nothing was clearly broken. Everything just did not work quite right. When the council demanded census information, thousands of local governments reported different numbers. The council tried to verify which government had the correct data. They found that each government had good reasons for their numbers. They had used different calculation methods. They had counted different populations. No one had lied, but the council could not get one clear answer. The council's administrators reported that Earth was proving to be more complicated than expected. VEX 7 received these reports and found them strange. But VEX 7 had no evidence of organized resistance. There were no weapons. There were no demonstrations. There were no public statements against the council. What the council saw was just normal human confusion and Bureaucratic slowness. Vex-7 did not understand that billions of people were now working together in ways the Council could not recognize. Teachers were organizing education. Nurses were protecting health. Engineers were creating secret communication. Farmers were hiding food. Factory workers were slowing production. Parents were teaching their children. Neighbors were helping neighbors. The entire civilization was slowly separating from the Council's control while appearing to cooperate completely. The Council was not being fought by armies. It was being resisted by teachers, nurses, engineers, farmers, builders, and ordinary people who decided that their freedom was worth more than cooperating. And the Council had no idea that this resistance existed, because the Council was only looking for weapons and soldiers. The Council became frustrated with Earth in the 4th month of occupation. Production was not meeting quotas. Census data was contradictory. Medical screening showed inconsistent results. Government officials reported problems, but nothing could be proven. When the Council's data analysis systems ran their reports, nothing was clearly wrong. But nothing was clearly right. Either Vex-7 understood that the Council's authority was being questioned. Other occupied worlds were watching Earth. If Earth could delay and confuse the Council, other worlds would try the same methods. The Council needed to demonstrate power. The Council needed to show that resistance was impossible. Vex-7 chose a target carefully. In Southern California, a major military installation housed computers and communications equipment. The installation was important, but not essential to city life. Destroying it would be a demonstration, not a catastrophe for the population. Vex-7 calculated that this target would prove that the Council could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. But what Vex-7 did not know was that Kevin Hartwell had been thinking about exactly this moment for weeks. Kevin had taught military strategy as part of his science class. He had studied how advanced aliens would think about demonstrating power. He had read old military texts about showing dominance. He understood that advanced beings from distant worlds would think in patterns. They would predict human reactions based on military logic. But Kevin knew something they did not. He knew how human minds worked. Kevin had shared his analysis with Kevin's inner circle. Claire the nurse, Roger the engineer, Victoria the teacher, Diane his wife. These 4 had become the center of human resistance without the Council knowing. They met secretly using Roger's hidden network. They discussed how the Council would think. The Council will attack something military, Kevin had said to them weeks earlier. They will attack to make a point. They will choose a target that shows power without destroying civilian life. That is how military minds think. They think attacking cities is inefficient. They think soldiers understand logic better than civilians understand fear. Roger had understood immediately. We can predict their target. We can move people away. But how do we do that without the Council noticing? Claire had asked. That had been the problem they solved in the next weeks. Victoria's education network had taught construction workers and engineers in targeted areas about planning for emergencies. Emergency plans had been drawn. Mock drills had been organized. People were trained to move quickly if needed. No one but the inner circle knew the real reason engineers had begun exploring underground areas in Southern California months earlier. They had found tunnels and subway systems. They had mapped routes to safe areas far from the military installation. They had stockpiled supplies. They had done all of this using normal city planning processes. No one questioned it. Kevin had written detailed letters to the Council explaining why the base was important. He had written to the military explaining why the base needed more security. He had written to city officials suggesting better transportation and shelter for surrounding areas. He had created 100 reasons for the preparations without ever mentioning the Council's true intentions. when Vex 7 made the decision to attack the military installation. The Council sent a message to the area's government officials. They had been instructed to evacuate all civilian populations within 10 kilometers. The Council wanted the area clear of civilians to prove they were not killing innocent people. But the evacuation order was exactly what Kevin had been waiting for. The moment the evacuation order came, hidden messages went out through Roger's network. Videos that had been prepared in advance went live. Messages that had been written in advance were sent. Digital signals that had been created in advance were activated. Within 3 hours, every person in the evacuation zone had received instructions. Not from the government, not from the military, from teachers, nurses, engineers, and ordinary people in their communities. Everyone knew where to go. Everyone knew which tunnels to use. Everyone knew which temporary shelters had been prepared. Construction workers guided people through tunnels that few people knew existed. Teachers organized groups and kept people calm. Nurses set up supply stations in underground areas. Engineers managed traffic flow through narrow passages. Families moved together. Groups moved together. Neighbors helped each other. By the time the Council's weapon was ready to fire, not a single human being remained in the target area. The weapon descended from the Council ship. It was designed to strike with precision. It would destroy the military installation and create a radius of damage. It would show the Council's power. Vex 7 watched from orbit as the weapon fired. The impact was violent. The military installation was destroyed. Communications equipment was vaporized. Buildings collapsed. It was an impressive display of force. It was exactly what Vex 7 had planned. But when the Council's monitoring systems checked the area, they found something unexpected. The casualty numbers were 0. The civilian count was 0. The death toll was 0. The area was completely empty. Vex 7 checked the evacuation records. The government had ordered evacuation. The population had followed orders. Civilians had left the area. But what the Council's records did not show was the hidden preparation. The records did not show the tunnels. The records did not show the supply depots. The records did not show the engineers who had planned escape routes for months. The Council's administrators analyzed what had happened. They calculated probabilities. They reviewed data. They came to a conclusion that shook their understanding of Earth. Humans had known they would attack. Humans had predicted the location. Humans had predicted when it would happen. Humans had evacuated the population without any orders from government. Humans had done all of this without the Council detecting any preparation. The Council realized something that Vex 7 had not considered. Humans had predicted not just the attack, but how the attack would come. Humans understood the Council's military logic better than the Council. Understood humanity. The realization spread through the Council's administration. They reviewed all the delays, all the data problems, all the contradictions. They understood now that none of it was accident. It was planned. Billions of humans have been organizing against them while appearing to cooperate. The Council had focused on military installations and government centers. The Council had ignored the billions of civilians. But even more disturbing was what happened in the hours after the attack. Across Earth, in every city, from every neighborhood, humans were moving. They were leaving cities. They were moving to hidden locations. They were dispersing into the countryside. They were spreading out so widely that tracking them became impossible. Rogers' network sent out final instructions. Move. Disperse. Find safety in numbers and distance. Hide not in fortresses, but in communities. The Council had won the battle by destroying a military target. But the Council had lost the war in a moment of realization. Satellite images showed millions of humans on roads and pathways, leading away from cities. The Council tried to stop them. But there were too many people. There were not enough soldiers. The council could not arrest millions of people without destroying them, and destroying them would prove the council was willing to kill humans for just trying to leave. The council tried to blockade roads. Humans walked around them through forests and fields. The council tried to seal city boundaries. Humans left through tunnels and underground passages. The council tried to use force to stop the movement. But each use of force proved to the watching population that they were right to fear the council. What had started as careful organization by a few thousand people became a movement of billions. The network that Claire, Roger, and Victoria had built could now handle the largest communication task in human history. Billions of ordinary people, given clear instructions by people they trusted, moved like a single organism without any central command. From orbit, the council watched Earth transforming in real time. Cities began to empty. People moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually coordinated through 1,000 hidden communication nodes. The population was not fighting. The population was leaving. The population was surviving by becoming invisible, scattered across a continent they knew intimately. Vex 7 understood what this meant. The council had tried to attack humans as if they were a military entity. But humans were not a military entity. Humans were billions of individual people, connected by something the council could not measure: trust, family, community, the desire to protect each other. The council had destroyed buildings and military equipment. But the council had made a weapon out of fear, and that weapon had activated the thing that made humans truly dangerous. Not their weapons, not their strategy, not their military might, their willingness to stand together. The council's leadership called an emergency session. They sat in their gathering chamber on the station that orbited Earth. The beings who controlled 1,000 worlds looked down at the blue planet and felt something they had never felt before. They felt confusion. Vex-7 made the final report. The population has dispersed. We cannot locate concentrated populations. We cannot use force without killing large numbers of civilians. Killing large numbers of civilians will trigger a response from other council worlds who are watching. Other species will begin to question their own compliance if they see we destroy a civilian population. The council's administrator asked the question that haunted all of them. What makes humans different from other species we have controlled? Vex-7 analyzed the data. The analysis was simple and clear. Humans had chosen to sacrifice comfort for freedom. Humans had chosen to protect strangers. Humans had chosen to work together even when they had different governments, different languages, and different beliefs. Every other species the council controlled had accepted control because it was practical. It was easier than resistance. It was safer than fighting, but humans had rejected safety. Humans had chosen hardship because hardship was better than submission. Humans had organized in ways that did not require central authority. Humans had coordinated through millions of separate decisions made by millions of individual people, each deciding to protect their community. They are not strong because of weapons, Vex-7 said. They are not powerful because of military strategy. They are powerful because they value individual human life more than they value peace. They will risk death to protect freedom. They will accept hardship to maintain dignity. They will trust each other even when trust brings danger. A being called Mesh-9 from the Outer Council spoke. Mesh-9 represented a species that had been under council control for 500 years. Mesh-9's words shook the chamber. If this is true, then we are all vulnerable. Every species under council control is making a choice to accept our authority. Every species could make the choice humans are making. If humans can reject the council, then any population can reject the council. Silence filled the chamber. The council's leaders understood the danger. They had control because species allowed control. Control was maintained through the belief that resistance was impossible. If humans proved resistance was possible, then every dominated population would begin to think resistance was possible. The Council tried to stop the human broadcast. They tried to shut down Roger's network. But they did not know how many hidden transmission points there were. They did not know which buildings housed servers. They did not know that the network was not in buildings at all. The network was in homes. It was in schools. It was in hospitals. It was in thousands of locations, controlled by thousands of ordinary people. The broadcasts continued. Kevin's message was sent first. Then Claire's message. Then Victoria's message. Then Roger's message. Then Diane's message. And then 1,000 other messages from teachers, nurses, engineers, farmers, and ordinary humans talking about why they chose to risk everything. Kevin spoke to the world from a hidden location. The Council did not try to stop him. The Council realized that stopping him would only make more people want to listen. Better to let him speak and see if his words would control the population. "My name is still Kevin Hartwell," he said to the camera. "I am still a teacher. I teach children about the world and how it works. I want to tell you about our situation because I think you deserve to know the truth." He spoke for an hour. He did not talk about military strategy. He did not talk about weapons. He talked about his daughter Elena, who was afraid of the future. He talked about his son Marcus, who wanted to know if they could win. He talked about his wife Diane, who had spent 14 hours showing other nurses how to hide medical supplies. "I cannot promise you that we will win," Kevin said. "I cannot promise that the Council will leave. But I can tell you what I have learned in the past months. I learned that humans are strongest when we trust each other. I learned that we are most powerful when we think of other people's children as important as our own children. I learned that freedom is not something governments give us. Freedom is something we create when we choose to care for each other instead of saving ourselves." He spoke about Claire, who had taught a nurse in Cairo how to organize healthcare secretly. He spoke about Victoria, who had connected teachers across 7 continents. He spoke about Roger, who had given people the ability to talk without being heard by their oppressors. He spoke about people he would never meet, doing things that would help people they would never know. "The Council thinks we are dangerous because we have weapons," Kevin said. "But we are dangerous because we choose each other. We are dangerous because we will accept hunger instead of abandoning our community. We are dangerous because we will accept fear instead of accepting control. We are dangerous because we are human, and being human means we value life and dignity more than we value obedience." In hidden locations across Earth, billions of humans listened. In cities, they listened on hidden networks. In scattered communities, they listened to people reading Kevin's words. Children listened to parents explaining what Kevin meant. The elderly listened to young people sitting beside them. In mosques, churches, temples, and secular gathering places, humans listened and understood. In council chambers on other worlds, the message was being analyzed. The Council tried to block the transmission, but it was too late. Too many copies existed. Too many people had already heard it. Species under Council control heard a human teacher tell them that resistance was possible and that resistance was worth the cost. On the Council's observation platform, Vex 7 watched the effect spread. Species were questioning their rulers. Species were beginning to organize. Species were beginning to believe that they had rights that could not be taken. The Council had tried to prevent a revolution. The Council had created one. Diane spoke next. She addressed the healthcare workers of the world. She told them that the Council could not run hospitals without nurses and doctors. She told them that they had power. She told them that they could choose to help people instead of helping a system of control. Within weeks, medical systems across 50 worlds were developing hidden networks similar to the ones on Earth. Victoria addressed teachers. She told them that education was the most powerful tool available to humans. She told them that the council could control buildings and papers, but could not control what people learned in their hearts. She told them that the future belonged to those who taught people to think for themselves. Teachers across the galaxy heard her and began creating secret education networks. Roger addressed the engineers and technologists. He released his code for secure communication. He told them to share it freely with other species. Within a month, secure networks were being built on 20 worlds. The Council's monitoring systems were becoming useless. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting of all leadership. They realized that their control was based on something fragile. It was based on the belief that resistance was impossible. Humans had made resistance visible. Humans had made resistance successful. Other species were now beginning to believe they could resist too. A new voice called for a different approach. Mesh 9 spoke again, but this time with strength. Humans have shown us something we did not want to know, Mesh 9 said. They have shown us that force control is unstable. They have shown us that cooperation based on choice is stronger than compliance based on force. If we destroy Earth, we will create 1,000 more Earths. But if we accept what humans are teaching us, we might build something new. We might build a council based on equal partnership instead of domination. The council fell into argument. Some wanted to maintain control by any means. Some wanted to crush human resistance before it spread further. But others had seen the truth that Vex 7 and Mesh 9 saw. The council could not win against a population that was willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. The council could only win by offering freedom. Vex-7 understood what this meant. The council's age of control was ending. Something new was being born. And it was being born because humans had refused to bow. The council faced a choice that could not be avoided. They could maintain their old system or accept that the old system was breaking. Some council members voted to crush Earth and all resistance. But other council members, including Mesh 9 and many administrators from dominated worlds, voted to open negotiations. Vex 7 made the announcement to Earth. The council would not invade further. The council would withdraw administrators from Earth's territory. In exchange, humans must agree to participate in the council. Humans must accept boundaries on military expansion. Humans must agree not to attack other council worlds. Kevin received the message through official channels. But by this time, official channels no longer meant anything. Kevin called a meeting of the true leadership of humanity. Claire came from her hidden clinic. Roger came from his underground server center. Victoria came from the school where she had been teaching. Diane came from a hospital where she had been training nurses. They sat together in a safe location and discussed what it meant for humanity. The council was offering a deal. Join the council as equals instead of subjects. Have a voice in council decisions instead of just following orders. Trade freedom from the council for responsibility to the council. The council is still dangerous, Claire said. But the council we face now is not the council we faced before. They understand that force control does not work. They are offering what they could not have offered before. They are offering choice. But choice with conditions, Victoria added. We must not attack. We must accept boundaries. We must play by the council's rules about space and resources. Kevin nodded slowly. Every choice has conditions. Humans live with conditions every day. We accept them because the alternative is worse. The council is offering us survival and voice. We should accept. Roger was thinking differently. We have the ability now to do something bigger. We could help other species build networks like ours. We could help them organize as we organized. We could spread what we learned. And that is exactly what we should do, Diane said. But we should do it openly this time. We should do it as part of joining the council. We should teach the Council how to govern without dominating. We should show them that cooperation is stronger than control. The decision was made. Humanity would join the Galactic Council. But humanity would join as something new. Humans would not abandon the networks. Humans would expand them. Humans would teach other species how to organize, how to communicate, how to trust each other. The first official meeting between human representatives and the Council happened in a neutral location. Kevin attended as the chief human representative. Claire attended as representative of healthcare and human welfare. Roger attended as representative of communication and technology. Victoria attended as representative of education. Diane attended as representative of human, civilian coordination. The Council's members had expected military generals and political leaders. Instead, they faced a teacher, a nurse, an engineer, an educator, and a medical coordinator. These 5 beings represented the true strength of humanity. Not military power, not political authority, but the power of people to organize, to care for each other, and to survive. Kevin explained humanity's terms. Earth would join the Council. Earth would contribute to the Council's security. Earth would accept the Council's legal boundaries. But Earth would maintain its own systems. Earth would continue to teach people to think independently. Earth would continue to support the dispersed networks that had saved humanity. And, Kevin added, we will help other species build the same networks. We will teach them how to organize. We will show them how cooperation works. We will help them understand that the Council can only be strong if all members are truly equal. The Council members looked at each other. Some were angry. Some understood. Mesh9 spoke first. Humans are proposing that the Council change its fundamental nature. Humans are proposing that we become a real alliance instead of a system of control. This is dangerous for those of us who benefit from the current system, but it is necessary for all of us to survive. The vote was not unanimous. Some Council members walked out. Some demanded military action against Earth. Some demanded that humans be expelled from the chamber. But the vote passed. Humanity would join the Council. Humanity would be treated as equals. In the years that followed, everything changed. Education networks that Victoria had started across Africa began connecting with teachers on 20 other worlds. Healthcare systems that Claire had organized began sharing medical knowledge across species that had never communicated before. Roger's communication networks expanded until secure communication linked 1,000 worlds. Kevin continued teaching, but now his students came from dozens of species. Diane coordinated civilian relief programs that helped people across the galaxy. The old Council did not survive. The Council that tried to control through domination could not exist in a galaxy that had learned to organize through cooperation. Some parts of the Council remained. Some parts reformed. Some parts dissolved. What emerged was something new. Not a government in the traditional sense. Not a military alliance. But a network of connected species, each maintaining their independence, each contributing their strengths, each learning from each other. Species that had been dominated for centuries began to organize. They used the methods humans had created. They built hidden networks. They educated their populations. They coordinated their actions without waiting for permission from any authority. Some councils tried to crush these movements. Those councils fell. Some councils adapted and changed their nature. Those councils survived and became stronger. Years passed. Kevin stood in a school that had been built on multiple levels, underground and above ground, designed by humans and used by students from 7 different species. He taught science to children who had come from different worlds. He taught them not just facts, but how to think. He taught them that civilization was built by people who cared for each other. He taught them that the most powerful beings in the galaxy were not those with the biggest weapons, but those willing to trust and sacrifice for each other. His daughter Elena had become a teacher herself. His son Marcus had become an engineer who built communication systems for species that were learning to connect. Both of them understood what their father had learned. The future belonged to those who built networks, not fortresses. The future belonged to those who taught people to think, not follow orders. The future belonged to those who chose compassion over conquest. Claire had established the first hospital that served patients from multiple species. She trained nurses from 30 worlds. She taught them that healthcare was about recognizing that all beings suffered, all beings needed help, and all beings deserved dignity. Her work had saved more lives than any military victory. Victoria's education networks now shaped how children across the galaxy were being taught. She had written curriculum that emphasized cooperation instead of competition. She had created systems where teachers in different cities, different countries, and different worlds could share lessons and learning. She had proven that education could unite the galaxy in ways that military power never could. Roger's communication networks had evolved beyond security. They now connected researchers solving problems together. They connected friends separated by light years. They connected communities that would have never met otherwise. Roger had taken technology designed to hide resistance and transformed it into technology that connected the galaxy. Diane had become an ambassador who traveled between worlds not to negotiate treaties, but to help communities learn how to build healthcare systems, education networks, and security organizations that operated through cooperation instead of force. Everywhere she went, she taught that humans had discovered something the galaxy needed. They had discovered how to be strong without dominating, how to be safe without being oppressive, how to build civilization through the simple act of caring for each other. The old story about the Galactic Council spread across the galaxy. Other species told it to their children. It was told as a warning about the dangers of attempting to control populations. It was told as inspiration about what ordinary people could accomplish. It was told as proof that the strongest force in the universe was not weapons, but the willingness of people to trust each other and work together. Vex 7 had eventually retired from the council. Vex 7 had been replaced by Mesh 9. Mesh 9 led a council that was no longer an empire. It was a family of connected beings, each learning from each other, each contributing their unique strengths. In the end, it was not humans who conquered the galaxy. It was humanity's fundamental nature that spread. The understanding that cooperation is stronger than domination. The belief that all beings have worth. The knowledge that the future is built by ordinary people making extraordinary choices to care for each other. Years after the crisis had passed, Kevin was interviewed about those first months of the council's occupation. The interviewer asked him if he had been afraid. "Of course I was afraid," Kevin answered. "I was afraid of the weapons. I was afraid of what the council would do. I was afraid of what we might lose. But I was more afraid of living under control, more afraid of a future where my children could not think for themselves, more afraid of a world